people. People are
Oh,
still
I'm supposed to start. Okay.
You're supposed to start.
Well, thank you very much. Welcome to this discussion. And on behalf of the History Faculty of Ambedkar University, it's my very great pleasure to welcome and invite Professor Ishtiyaq Ahmed. Professor Ahmed was a senior fellow at the National University Singapore. He's currently a professor emeritus of political science at the Stockholm University, which is a place where he did a lot of his studies and teaching. Professor Ahmed he's a political scientist by training. He's written an important book on Pakistan after it was made, 1947 to 2011, and also on the partition of Punjab. My sense is that these two books, A Story of Partition and A Story of Pakistan and of the Partition of Punjab, that may have led him to his, in some ways, most important, also controversial, also talked about book on Jinnah, his biography of Jinnah, which is his latest book. This book has been really in circulation. Many people have talked about it. People have disagreed with him. What he has done, I mean, according to me, in my view, the importance of that book is that for a long time there was a kind of a orthodoxy on the forces which led to partition and the role of Jinnah in it. And I think it was in 1980s that that orthodoxy, that somewhat consensual position came to be challenged and questioned in a very, very big way, particularly by Aisha Jalal, but also one or two other historians. I think what Professor Ishtiyaq Ahmed has done is that he has, in a way, I'm very thankful to him for it, he has set the record straight. He has questioned questioning that was done in the 1980s. And in some ways, he has made a great, very important contribution in restoring, bringing back some of the sanity in our historical discourse. So if there is one thing I am thankful to Professor Ahmed for, it is to bring back sanity, data, perspective, a fidelity to data. Let your data talk. That is an extremely important aspect of Professor Ishtiyaq Ahmed's historical and political science writings. He has obviously combined history and political science. He has a keen sensitivity to changes over time, which historians are supposed to have, but he is also very sensitive to the whole spectrum of possibilities which is there in front of political formations and leaders at a particular point in time. And I think both these things, sensitivity to time and being aware of the range of possibilities at a particular given in time, these are absolutely necessary if we want to be fair to history, historical processes, historical actors. So in some ways, he has been very fair to Jinnah in saying all that he has said in his biography of Jinnah. And we are all very happy, in some ways also fortunate that he's agreed to our request to share some of his ideas, some of his observations on these important phenomena of the history of the subcontinent. Thank you very much, Professor Ahmed. We welcome you once again, and I now invite you to make your observations and to tell us important things. We are all very keenly waiting for you, we the students and teachers of Ambedkar University. Thank you, Professor Ahmed.
Thank you, Professor Salil Misra ji. You have been very kind in your introductory remarks about me. Indeed, challenging this thesis that Jinnah did not want partition and the Congress forced it upon him was one major reason I thought I had to look into it, because to me it didn't sound convincing at all. And we'll come to that later, of course. But the two-nation theory, that's the topic for today. And I think colleagues who have been working on it would know that notoriously it's a problem to start from where. When did the two-nation theory really originate? But I think conventionally one can say that with the decline or even the end of the Mughal Empire and with the rise of the British, among both Hindus and Muslims, a fear of the future, or at least apprehension of what will happen once the British are gone uh, seem to attract a lot of their reflections. And there were communal minded Hindus and communal minded Muslims, and even among Sikhs in the Punjab, you find future of the Punjab being discussed, among Sikhs, Muslims, and Hindus. So there were people who were worried about an India without the British, and that's itself very interesting. That even when the British believed that they have India as a gift of providence forever, but within the people of India, these ideas were being tossed around. But I would say a friend of mine, Professor Partha Ghosh, recently published an article in which he showed that in 1858, in Bengal, there was uh, someone, Tarin Charan Chattopadhyay, uh, who wrote the first anti-Muslim manifesto. So already in Bengal, there was this feeling that the coming of Islam to Bengal had been uh, 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 been very destructive of Hinduism and Bengali culture and so on. On the other hand, Sir Syed and others looked upon the British for protection. They said that Muslim elite interests were best served if you align yourself with the British and not join the Indian National Congress. I think the turning point, the most important event in the history of the subcontinent is the founding of the All India National Congress. Because for the first time, a novel new idea that all Indians, bona fide Indians who live on Indian territory, are citizens of the state. This new idea, in a way, challenged not only these communal sort of arguments which were going around, but also uh, the plurality of castes, languages, ethnicity, all were reduced to one thing, that if you are a bona fide resident of India, then you are an Indian and you are part of the Indian nation. Of course, originally, the Indian National Congress was a petitioning party in which enlightened Indians, a very prominent portion of them being Parsis, Bengalis, Maharashtrians, and of course, Indian Muslims as well, but of the coastal cities like Bombay. This was the new idea which emerged. And I would say that one reason was that the British had integrated India into uh, an economy, into a communication system, into and thus created a new type of consciousness, because now through newspapers, the print media started playing a role. Uh, the train, the new roads enable people to travel from one part of the country to another in a matter of days, one can say even hours. Then you had the telegraph. All these things brought together a sense of Indianness. And I would say that the Indian National Congress represented that sentiment of the Indian people. Originally elitist, but from the time of Mahatma Gandhi, it became a mass movement. Naturally, when the Congress started demanding more and more rights from the British, there was bound to be a reaction. And we find that upper class Ashrafia Muslims mainly, but successful Muslims in general, then taking a petition to Shimla in 1906, urging the Viceroy, Lord Minto, that the importance of the Muslim community to the continuation of the British Empire must be realized, that Muslims were placed in sensitive areas, especially the Northwest, and they were represented in the armed forces, and therefore they needed uh, separate representation and even weightage. 1909, we know that is granted, and then the two nation theory sort of, I would say, is 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 marginalized because of some of the radical developments which took place. The Lucknow Pact, in which Jinnah played a very pivotal role, brought together the Indian National Congress and the All India Muslim League, and then we find Hindus and Muslims cooperating over the Rowlatt Acts, the Amritsar massacre which took part. I was looking at the lists of the people who were killed. Most fatalities were those of Hindus, followed by Muslims, and then thirdly of Sikhs. One doesn't get this impression. Normally, one thinks it was a Sikh affair alone. But if you look at the people who were gunned down that day, the highest number is that of Hindus, then of Muslims, and then of the Sikhs. So definitely this was a sense of Indianness vis-a-vis British colonialism, British imperialism. And in Lahore, in the Badshai Mosque, all rules were broken, and Hindu leaders could address the people assembled there from the pulpit, which is from where the prayers and the Friday khutbah is given. So there was a moment in time when Hindu, Muslim, Sikhs all became very close to one another, irrespective of their religions and cults and so on and so forth. But then we have the schism taking place between Mahatma Gandhi wanting mass action against British rule, non-cooperation, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who both were, together, at least during the opposition to the Rowlatt Act. And Jinnah then dissociates with that and develops a grudge against Gandhi that he was the architect of the Lucknow Pact, and now Gandhi comes from South Africa and captures the fancy of the people, and his ambition to be the leader of the two communities has been called into question. Thenceforth, I say that there is a period in which there are certain events which keep the two nation theory alive in some form. You have the Khilafat movement, in which the Hindus and Muslims come together very closely, at least in northern India, in Punjab, in Lahore. I gave evidence of that. There is a book by Som Anand, a Hindu of Lahore, Lahore, a lost city, I think, in which he mentions that his father, Lala Fakir Chand, who was a well-known banker, he says, my father used to avoid touching Muslims when he went to the bazaar and so on. And if accidentally that happened, he would come home, change clothes and wash himself, things like this. But after the Khilafat sort of movement, where Mahatma Gandhi made Hindus and Muslims take an oath that from now onwards we are brothers, after that sentiment was shared, this prejudice against Muslims, at least in Lahore, and was set aside. So these were the positives. Then comes the Mopla anti-climax. Although now I find in India a lot of propaganda going along that it is because of the Khilafat. And I've argued that makes no sense. Those Muslims who came to the Indian National Congress because of the Khilafat remained with the Indian National Congress, the Jamiyat Ulama Hind, or they joined the communist movement in the subcontinent. These were Muslims who left India because of the Hijrat movement, went to Central Asia, crossed into the Soviet Union, were impressed by Lenin, and then came back and were the harbingers of the communist movement in the subcontinent. Roy was one of them, not a Muslim, but he was also N.M. Roy. He was one of those who came to the Soviet Union because of this. The Pan Islamism then became an ally of the Indian National Congress. The Mopla uprising was probably a, a misunderstanding by somebody from South India about what it was all about. And then you know better than me what happened there. Uh, Another incident which followed is 1924 in Kohat, all the way northwest frontier province, where uh, the Hindus were attacked viciously by the Muslims for apparently somebody writing a poem disparaging the Holy Prophet. So, who did this? Was it the intelligence agencies provoking all this? In my Punjab partition book, I've shown that in 1947, definitely there were these forces who would instigate Hindus and Muslims to attack one another. So why not Kohat and why not the Mopla uprising? Because if you look at the leadership, all of them wanted cooperation, but somebody wanted to subvert it, and it happened. So what I'm trying to say is that although events helped the two-nation theory keep on coming back in opposition to the Indian National Congress, and the Indian National Congress still uh, uh, had the support of the masses, including poor Muslims, I would imagine. Uh, because the Muslim League until 1940, I would say, was an elite party, only 1,500 members, of which half of them never paid the annual subscription fee. So it was just a gathering of some individuals. In Lahore, until 1938, the Muslim League didn't even have an office. So the Muslim League and its movement become important from 1937 onwards. But up until then, it was the Indian National Congress confronting the British, demanding more and more rights. Then on the left, you have Sardar Bhagat Singh and his comrades challenging the state in a revolutionary manner, and they were crushed. Of course, right, left extremism, the British wouldn't spare. They brought down the full might of the state against them, but they didn't know how to deal with Gandhi, who would not uh, advocate violence, but would break the law only peacefully. And apparently for the British, this was a moral dilemma: how to go and deal with such a man. And I mean, we all know what sort of a headache Mahatma Gandhi was for the British. But the two nation theory, then, I would say, in the 30s, somehow, this idea, much before the 1935 Act and the 1937 elections, you find this idea. Let me at least mention three names. In 1880, in Lahore, Rafiq-e-Hind, a newspaper or apparently a magazine, took a position very hostile to the idea of a united India. And the idea was that the Muslims should constitute a separate nation. Uh, then in, I think, 1902 or 1904, Bhai Parmanand, a Hindu from Multan, came up with the idea that we should push the Muslims west of the Indus, and those who are on our side, either they be converted or thrown out or whatever, so that Hindustan is for Hindus and west of the Indus is for Muslims. Lala Lajpat Rai's father, by the way, converted to Islam uh, very much impressed by Sir Syed. But when he realized that Sir Syed was rabidly anti-Hindu, he went back to the Arya Samaj faith. And then Lala Lajpat Rai in 1924, after the Kohat riots, also advocates the partition of Punjab and India. So these ideas were there in reaction to some of the extreme activities which were taking place. But by and large, most people were with the Indian National Congress. Then I would say that it's the 1935 Act, the 1937 elections, and after the election results, I know Professor Mishra and I have different understandings of it, but I have subsequently read on this issue, and maybe there was no gentleman's understanding in the UP, but after the elections, at least, there was an attempt that somehow the Muslim League people who were elected in the UP assembly be given some sort of representation uh, in the in the ministry, but the conditions which the with the Congress leadership, and I don't know who should be blamed. Many names are taken. Rafiq Ahmed Kidwai is one, Maulana Azad, and then Jawaharlal Nehru. That finally it was his decision that either you resign the Muslim League and join Congress, or you don't get a ministership. And at that point, I have said that Jinnah then confides in the governor of Bombay that from now onwards it will be communalism, Hindus versus Muslims, the basis of my politics. And I think that's from a demand or an idea set forth over and over again by, let's say, intellectuals, thinkers, influential political figures. There is a transformation when this idea becomes the basis of a political demand, of a political party, and a movement. And from 1937 to 1940, in this period, then you find some efforts made. Like in January 1940, three leaders met at Jinnah Saab's residence, the Malabar Hill residence. Jinnah, of course, was the host. Then Dr. Ambedkar came, and Mr. Periyar from South India. And I think on the 6th or the 8th, there is a picture of them also available where they were talking to one another. And the hope was that they will form an alternative national party to the Indian National Congress. But nothing came out of it. Then on the 16th of January, Mahatma Gandhi writes a letter to Jinnah. My dear Qaid-e-Azam, I address you as Qaid-e-Azam because many people do that, and so he says, you are the only leader who can help establish an alternative democratic party to the Indian National Congress, because all three of you allege that the Congress is a upper caste Hindu party. So now you have the Muslims, you have the Dalits, and you have the people of South India, the Dravidians. Their numbers would be enough to be more or less equal to the Congress. So please, you lead this party. And Jinnah dismisses it. I think by that time, Jinnah had his own problem. He thought he had lost to Mahatma Gandhi in 1920. Then for 7 years, he had to struggle from among Muslim leaders for the leadership of the Muslim community, which included Sir Agha Khan, then two very strong people from Punjab, Sir Mian Muhammad Shafi, Sir Mian Fazle Hussain, then Sir Abdur Rahim from Bengal, and there were many other people, in the UP as well. Having done that, in 1940, Jinnah didn't want to share leadership with anyone. He wanted now to be the leader of the Muslims, the sole spokesman. And from there, Jinnah becomes the leader of Muslim separatism, Muslim nationalism. I've said that in the 17 years in between from his Indian nationalism until Muslim nationalism is a period of uh, Muslim communitarianism, where he's not demanding, he's not, uh, you know, uh, uh, dichotomizing Hindus and Muslims as two hostile nations, but as two nations among Sikhs, Dalits, Dravidians, and others. And during this period, he wanted India to be some sort of loose federation with most powers vested in the provinces. We know that this was sidetracked, or it was left on the side, because the general consensus which had emerged was in favor of the Motilal Nehru report, which I've argued was an excellent framework for a strong federation, in which, I mean, India, the size of India, the complexities of India, and so on, you needed a strong center. And this is proven many times more when Jinnah himself becomes the Governor General and creates a 10 times more centralized Pakistan. Unless there is a strong center, you can't run a state of the type of, territory, people, and so on that we have in the subcontinent. So 1940 then is the Lahore Resolution, and that's the call for creating Muslim states in the Northeast and the Northwest. I have shown, coming back to this, that Jinnah never wanted a partition, and he's wanted a power sharing. I've said, give me one, and one would be enough to destroy all what I have said. Statement of Jinnah saying that he wants to have a power sharing deal with India within a united India. No, he never did. And what Aisha Jalal does is, if you look at her book, it's a scandal, I would say. Professor Misra, wouldn't you agree with me that if you say spokesman, Jinnah, All India Muslim League, and the demand of Pakistan, spokesman means what have you spoken? And in the book, there is not a single speech, single statement, single message of Jinnah quoted at any point. And why not? Because none of those speeches and statements say what she is asserting. So I sometimes wonder what is wrong with the academic community. I mean, why did it take me? I'm sure you did it. I have learned to it much later. But honestly, I didn't know that this has been done. But when I did it, I found overwhelming evidence, just the opposite of what she had claimed. But coming from Cambridge, and we know we are a very colonial people, I think, as a people. Anything done by the British is a great favor to us. So Cambridge, and then some people are awe-stricken by the fact that she carried this thesis and they didn't question. And only, I think, 3-4 days ago, there was a discussion at Kolkata where Professor Sunodhan Das once again called her work as path-breaking. And I was astounded, but I didn't take up on that occasion because, my book is one of the 5 which is listed for the Best Non-Fiction Book Award from the Value of Words. So I thought I could just, with impunity, with equanimity, ignore him. Because he wants to stick on, I can't do much about it. If after reading my book, he still has such an opinion, then I think he's beyond redemption, I would say. So the two-nation theory then becomes the engine of the Muslim League's bid. And I would say it's a mob movement that they unleash, bringing in all the ulama from the Barelvi school. This Labbaik Tariq was the one which was animated in 1945-46 election. And they went around describing Pakistan as a state based on the spirit of the state of Medina, founded by the Holy Prophet. So it's not Imran Khan who's doing this. It is Jinnah who let these people do it. And Jinnah is on record saying many, many, many times, that Islam will be our ideology. And he's issued a statement very contemptuous of the communists on the 19th of March 1944, saying that hands off, you communists. We have our own Islamic ideology. Do you think we are fools? We don't want your. So it's very clear. Jinnah was anti-secular, and one speech of 16th August was delivered because he felt that 35 million Muslims may be pushed across the border into Pakistan and Pakistan will collapse. It was not meant to declare Pakistan a secular state. Nobody took him seriously. He himself is involved in seeing to it that that speech disappeared from the public domain. He never returned to it. On the 14th of August, when the Pakistan National Constituent Assembly was actually inaugurated officially, he says, Mountbatten says that, of course, among Muslims, you have had Akbar as a great example. And he gives up Jinnah and says, Akbar is all right, but our main source of inspiration is Prophet Muhammad, who defeated the Christian and Jews, defeated, and then treated them well. So he brings back the Islamic factor. He wrote a letter to the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt that please send a scholar who can teach us how to create an proper Islamic state in Pakistan. So all that evidence is there. So the two-nation theory, from an idea tossed around many times every now and then in India, becomes the basis of a political movement. And because of the Second World War and the Congress not supporting the British, Jinnah from the margins became central. And I've shown in my book how the British then patronized Jinnah all along and used him as a counterweight to the Indian National Congress. So the two-nation theory delivered a Pakistan, but one Pakistan, not exactly what Jinnah wanted. He got the Pakistan which Rajagopalachari and Mahatma Gandhi were willing to concede in 1944, that in these two regions, after the British are gone, we can have a plebiscite and let people decide, all of them. And Jinnah wanted only the Muslims to vote in it, which was unacceptable. Already in 1940, when the demand for creating Muslim states was made public, and the two-nation theory was announced as the basis of their ideology, the Punjab Sikhs, Sardar Sundar Singh Majithia, challenged it and said that we will resist such a Pakistan, and we will ensure that the Hindus and Sikhs do not have to live in a communal Pakistan. So the demand for the partition of Punjab was already raised a week later after the Lahore Resolution. It took some time in Bengal to catch up, because then in Punjab you have the communal riots starting in early March, and 8th of March, the Congress finally, the High Command passes a resolution supporting the Sikh demand for the partition of Punjab. Once that was done, then the Congress indeed, along with the Hindu Mahasabha, supported the partition of Bengal, whereas Sohrawardy, Sarad Bose, and Roy were in favor of a united Bengal. But within the Muslim League, Khwaja Nazmuddin wanted a partitioned Bengal which could join Pakistan. So, this is the background of the two-nation theory. It's been part of the politics during the period when the British took over India and people started reflecting about an uncertain future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Ahmed, for saying so much in such a short time, in about 35 minutes, giving us a huge overview of the developments since 1857, 1858. I found this idea very interesting. I will have to go back and think about it, that in some form, the theory, in some form, it existed since the 1857, but it was not allowed to come up because of the Khilafat movement, because of the Congress Muslim League Pact, because of the march of Indian nationalism. It was held back. It was kept in abeyance or kept at a subterranean level, but under very different circumstances, which were produced by the 1935 Act and the provincial elections. The demon was out. The tin was out of the bottle. And then, of course,
Right.
right. So, that is an extremely important point. Of course, we cannot but admire your work and endorse so much of what you have said and what you have written. I open the floor to questions. Anyone can ask any questions or write it on the chat box, and Professor Ahmed would be very happy to address the questions. But in the meanwhile, I just had one small little query, and this pertained to Bengal. I was just wondering, what is really the Bengal story, the Punjab story you told us very, very well. In Bengal, it seems that the conflict or the clash between a composite regional Bengal identity and an exclusive communal Muslim identity, this issue does remain somewhat open-ended or unresolved. Was that the case, or were there some other reasons why this demand for a united Bengal by Sohrawardi and by Sharat Roy and all the three leaders that came up? And I suppose it must have come up in all seriousness till as late as 1946 or 47. So do we have some Bengal specific explanation, or is the Bengal story different from Punjab story in some ways? What is really the Bengal? What is happening in Bengal? I mean,
I think this is, thank you, Professor. There was certain part of the story which I, in a hurry, didn't take up, and that is that if you look at the demand for a Muslim state, most of its proponents were from northwestern India. Actually, all of them Punjabis. If we say that the earliest, you have Hindu Punjabis, Bhai Parmanand and Lala Lajpat Rai demanding the partition of India and Punjab to separate Muslims and Hindus. But if you look at the Muslim, we have this 1880 Rafiq-e-Hind editorial demanding the partition. Then in 1917, from Delhi, a family called Kheris, they came all the way to Stockholm, where I live, at the meeting of the, I think, first international, Socialist International. And they projected the idea that we need an Islamic Socialist Republic in India. 1917. 1918, the Aga Khan then comes up with this novel idea of an Anglo-Muhammadan empire extending from northern India, including Persia and Central Asian republics and so on. So that was another idea. I'm sure the British were behind this idea because the Aga Khan was a protege of the British. He wouldn't open his mouth unless somebody encouraged him to do it. But then, most importantly, if you look at the stand on the two-nation theory of Allama Iqbal at Allahabad, it's about, he says, I see a future of the Muslims of northwestern India in a state created, So Iqbal's idea completely excludes
Bengal.
The Muslims of Bengal, who were actually the largest number, and the Muslims elsewhere in India, in Maharashtra, in Odisha, in UP, none of them are included. So in Iqbal's scheme, it's only 20% of the Indian Muslims who are part of this. Then the more aggressive form of this two-nation theory by Chaudhry Rahmat Ali, 1933 onwards, where he says we have nothing in common with the Hindus. Their heroes are our villains and vice versa. We don't dine, we don't marry, and so on and so forth. And even in his scheme, Pakistan, P is for Punjab, A for Afghania, which is frontier, K is for Kashmir, by the way.
That's right.
Istan is for Bengal and Sindh. So in these schemes, the Bengali Muslims were never to be part of this grand idea of a Muslim state. However, I think in 1940, when they came to Lahore, Qazi Fazlul Haq and all, the idea then was Muslim states in northwestern and northeastern India, which would mean there would be an eastern Pakistan and a western Pakistan, not one state. I think the one state idea is from April 1947, when Mukherjee, the Hindu Mahasabha leader, rabidly opposes the unity of Bengal set forth by Sohrawardy, Sharad Bose, and Roy. And he says that if India is going to be partitioned on a communal basis, then why not Bengal? And Mr. Kriplani, who was the president of Congress, I think at that time, and Jawaharlal Nehru support that idea, that if the principle of religion is going to apply to India and to Punjab, then why not to Bengal? But within the Muslim League, there were two positions. Sohrawardy wanting a greater Bengal and Jinnah supporting it. And Khwaja Nazmuddin wanting a partitioned Bengal so that Eastern Bengal could be part of Pakistan. And I think the final decision, which I have tried to underscore so many times, was of the British. They could have given any verdict on it. Finally, they decided to partition in a way that Pakistan was created, but it was going to be a state which would always be dependent on external supporters to sustain it economically and, of course, for its defense. And that is how Pakistan actively pursued becoming member of Western alliances. So if you read my Garrison State book, it's a complement to these two, the Punjab and Jinnah, but in between the nature of the Pakistani state. Why this state has never been truly a national state of anyone. It's always a state, I call it the rentier state, willing to rent out Pakistan first to the Americans, then to the Saudis and Chinese, and now to the Chinese. So that's the difference. India, because of its non-aligned movement and of its genuine anti-imperialism and anti-colonial policies, I've always said, and that is an envy. Hindu leaders, I may hate them from right to wrong, but all of them are true to their soil. But Pakistani leaders, almost anyone can join any alliance anytime if the money comes in. So that's a big difference. Pakistan lacks any national identity. You see, we are basically South Asians. If I come to India, do you think people would be able to make out I'm a Muslim or a Pakistani or what? No, I'll be lost in the crowd. And there's so many things which are so common, the language, the humor, the cunningness of our people, all that. It's the same DNA. Religion and politics divide people, but culture unites and language, I think, unites. I mean, we can all talk for hours in Hindustani, can't we? So that's how Bengal latches on to Pakistan only as late as 1947.
Sure.
Nobody wanted it to be a part of Pakistan earlier. No.
Sure. Thank you, Professor Ahmed. There is a question on the chat box. Let me just read it for you. It is from Munish Singh. Ishtiaq Sahib, partition of India keep background को communal politics के साथ attach करके बात की जाती है, चाहे वो मुस्लिम लीग की बात हो या हिंदू महासभा की. क्या सोशियो रिलीजियस रिफॉर्म मूवमेंट की भूमिका की बात नहीं होनी चाहिए? इस पर आप का की क्या राय है? And then Sucheta, do you want to, if it's similar, then you can make your point. Professor Sucheta Mahajan has raised a hand. So
अच्छा,
Sucheta,
No, it's a different point.
well, make your point anyway, then Ishtiyaq Saab can
wait,
take.
I think let me take care of each point one after.
Okay. Then after that, we'll go to Sucheta. Yes, sir.
जी.
Yes, Professor.
So मेरे ख्याल से हाँ वो मेरी जो किताब है उसमें मैंने इसको सब डिस्कस किया है कि जो था ना एक पुराना प्री कॉलोनियल हिंदुस्तान, उसमें लोगों का जो पीपल्स लेवल कल्चर है ना, उसके अंदर ऑर्थोडॉक्सीज को पीपल कुड पुट असाइड देम,
Right.
यानी ये जो वेद हैं और हकीम हैं, इनके पास हिंदू मुसलमान सिख जाते थे, मुसलमान श्राइन्स पे हिंदू सिख आया करते थे और मुसलमान जाते थे, और पंडितों के पास मुसलमान जाते थे अपने वो यानी हॉरोस्कोप बनवाने और उनकी दुआएं लेने। ये सारा पंजाब में होता था, यूपी का मुझे नहीं पता, पंजाब में दिस वाज अ वेरी मिक्स्ड सॉर्ट ऑफ कल्चर, यू नो। लेकिन विद द राइज ऑफ मॉडर्निटी और जो क्रिश्चियनिटी के आने के बाद जब मिशनरीज आए हैं ना, तो रिलीजियस रिवाइवल्स हुए हैं, और जब आप रिलीजियस रिवाइवल्स करते हैं तो यू स्टार्ट आर्ग्यूइंग फॉर सम प्योर ए हिस्टोरिकल फॉर्म, प्योर हिंदुइज्म जो कि वेदा की थी। आई मीन उसके बाद मिथ है कि ये तो सारी चीजें बाद में आई, कास्ट और ये, उसमें कुछ नहीं था। इस्लाम का ये था जी कि प्योर इस्लाम के अंदर तो ये ना कास्ट है ना ये है, वो तो रसूल अल्लाह ने कहा था कि अपने आखिरी सरवन में दैट काले को गोरे पे, गोरे को काले पे, अरब को गैर अरब पे कोई प्रेसिडेंट, कोई सुपीरियॉरिटी नहीं है एक्सेप्ट इन मैटर्स ऑफ योर पाइटी। तो मुसलमानों में भी आया कि नहीं नहीं, ये जो हुआ है इस्लाम के साथ ये एक्रीशंस हैं, वी हैव टू रिकवर द ट्रू इस्लाम। वो वो शाह वलीउल्लाह से शुरू होता है और वो चलता जाता है। हाँ जी। और सिखों के अंदर मूवमेंट शुरू हुई कि वी आर नॉट हिंदूज, सिख सभा मूवमेंट। तो जब आप प्योरिफिकेशन मूवमेंट्स लेके आते हैं तो साथ साथ आप प्योरिटी के साथ साथ बॉर्डर्स भी तो क्रिएट कर देते हैं ना, जो क्या कहते हैं ट्रेडिशनल सोसाइटी में लोग रोज क्रॉस कर रहे होते हैं। तो इन द न्यू बॉर्डर्स क्रिएटेड बाय रिलीजियस रिवाइवल्स, आई थिंक आल्सो added to the communal consciousness, definitely.
Okay, now thank you, Professor Ahmed. Now we have Professor Sucheta Mahajan and then Tuteja Saab, Professor Kundan Tuteja. Sucheta, maybe you can make your point.
Okay. Ishtiyaq Saab, we had met, you had come to JNU at to Center for Historical Studies many years ago. तो वहाँ मुलाकात हुई थी, शायद नौनिका ने आपका लेक्चर अरेंज किया था. I had the privilege of chairing. And recently also I have been listening to you. Though there were 2 points. One was about Bengal. Whether we call it fallacy of hindsight or whatever, today there is a very strong historiography coming out of what is today Bangladesh and earlier was East Bengal, where the roots of the Muslim identity, a separate Muslim identity, are being taken back to the second half of the 19th century and, located in the literary movements. You know, the literary movements, particularly the literary journals which were there, and then the formation of University of Dhaka as a counterpoint to Calcutta. So there is a historiography which is, as I said, I wonder sometimes whether it is what I sometimes call fallacy of hindsight. That is, you know, you reach a certain point, like there is a divorce, and then you start looking back to see when did you start to separate. And sometimes, you know, we may reach a point which actually we may go further back than we intend to. Sometimes something may happen like in 1946-47, and it may be, as you said, because of the British decision, which was the crucial thing, and in a way, all other things were immaterial. The second point was about Aisha Jalal. I couldn't agree with you more that it is perhaps our colonial mindsets which make us accept certain type of writing. Um, you see, one of the reasons for its popularity in India, uh, I think, and I would like your opinion on this, is that it fed into or it suited a certain very strong anti-congressism that
Exactly.
that
Exactly.
was there, certainly from post Mrs. Gandhi, post emergency. The book came out in 85, and so it tied in with that. So then that is why, um, one could understand why in India it got such a good reception, though everybody knew that what she was saying, all those dramatic statements that Jinnah did not want partition, Congress wanted partition, they were so obviously untrue. But the
True.
soil was there of anti-congressism, which gave it. Um, the last point I wanted to make was about, um, you see, what she's doing it, and I, in my book Independence and Partition, it's came out many years ago. Um, I had pointed out, in fact, I called it an intellectual sleight of hand. What
Say it
Aisha
again. An
Jalal,
intellectual. What did you say?
slate of hand,
अच्छा,
a
ठीक है.
slate of hand, I had said, because what she does is, in the crucial chapter, she collapses the partition of India with the partition of the province. When she's quoting Jinnah, the only time she's quoting Jinnah on the subject is when he's talking to Mountbatten and he's saying, please, he's saying the Muslims of Punjab and the Hindus of Punjab have one culture.
I
And
know, I know, I
and
know.
and then Mountbatten turns around and says, Jinnah Sahib, Mr. Jinnah, if that is your opinion about Punjab, surely that is true about the rest of India.
Yes, yes, yes,
So,
yes.
so the two, he is talking, he wants to save the whole of Punjab and the whole of Bengal for Pakistan.
I
And
know, I know,
for
I know.
that, for that, he is even willing to junk the two nation theory at that point and argue for the innate unity of the two peoples. So, but that, it's very clearly in that uh, tactical context that he is saying it and not
I'll, I'll
otherwise.
have I'll have to look at the book because I didn't find her referring or quoting Jinnah at all. And if she has done that, the reasons are exactly as you are telling us. Absolutely. A contradiction in terms. I have said if you have a major contradiction saying Hindus and Muslims are two hostile nations who want separate states, then a minor argument contradicting it has no value. Saying that Punjabi Hindus and Muslims have one culture and they are one people and Bengalis as well. It has absolutely no convincing power whatsoever. But did she at all even quote even Jinnah once? I found her at no point doing it.
In
But
this case,
I'll
she
I'll, I'll,
has.
I'll check.
It is the last chapter she has.
I'll check that because at least she can say I'm wrong on one account. But coming to your three concerns, I think in Bengal, of course, ये hindsight वाला जो wisdom है ना, this helps the people, uh, you know, extend their own preferences in reading history. ये बहुत very commonly this happens. Did
Yes.
Muhammad bin Qasim come to India with light and so on? ये हमेशा अब लोग कह रहे हैं कि नहीं जी वो तो ऑप्रेसर था और हमारा हीरो राजा दाहिर था. So ये इंटरप्रिटेशन री इंटरप्रिटेशन हिस्ट्री की होती रहती हैं. The current politics decide how you will give credit or condemn someone in the past. तो अब ये यही कर रहे हैं. मैंने तो कहा कि बंगाल at least in the Pakistan scheme had no position. Allama Iqbal didn't mention it, Chaudhry Rahmat Ali didn't mention it, और लाहौर रेजोल्यूशन जो है उसमें स्टेट्स का है, मुस्लिम स्टेट्स. So if there was going to be some state, it was going to be in the northeast, and not part of Pakistan. Pakistan ये जाके बना जाके 1945-46 में ये जब कैबिनेट मिशन प्लान आई है तो वहां पे 4th अप्रैल को the mission told Mr. Jinnah, can you, unless you can show us that eastern and western Pakistan are economically feasible and defensible, you leave us no choice but to leave it to India united. At that point, Jinnah then realizes that either he accepts the cabinet mission plan, and that also he does only half. He doesn't accept going to the Constituent Assembly to frame a constitution for one India. So this is also a myth that Muslim League accepted, Congress rejected. In any case, he has an ultimatum served now.
You're right.
Yeah, so that's the only reason why he concedes it. So वो जो है ना कि बंगाल के अंदर ये जो आप रीड कर रहे हैं और सुरंजन दास और ये सारे लोग उसके अंदर इन्वॉल्व हैं, तो वो समझ आती है. पीपल कुछ ना कुछ तो लोग करेंगे ना, तो व्हाई नॉट. इस किस्म की सोल सर्चिंग इसे कहते हैं, वो दुनिया करती रहती है. 10
नहीं,
साल
ये ईस्ट, इश्तियाक साहब, ये ईस्ट बंगाल से आ रहा है, ये सुरंजन का नहीं है. हाँ,
अच्छा, वो लेकिन वो संजन दास को पढ़ के ही करते होंगे ना.
नहीं, सुरंजन और है.
Professor Tuteja, I think Professor Tuteja has
मैं
raised
आ रहा
his
हूँ
hand.
तुनेजा जी की तरफ, मैं आ रहा हूँ तुनेजा पे आ रहा हूँ उनकी तरफ.
Okay.
लेकिन आपके सवालों का तो जवाब दे देना
जी बिल्कुल.
चेता जी का. और वो अगला सवाल क्या था, जरा जल्दी से बताएं. 3 थे सवाल आपके.
आयशा जलाल.
एक का तो आयशा जलाल वाला तो मैंने आपका रिजॉल्व कर दिया.
हाँ, वो I think there were 2 sets of questions. One pertained to Aisha Jalal and one pertained to this fallacy of hindsight.
No, you have answered. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
हाँ.
Professor Tuteja.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Salil Saab. Professor Ishtaq Ahmed Saab, I have been reading you. I'm basically a student of modern Indian history, and I have done some works, very little work on Punjab. And
I think
I
I've seen
agree
your
with you.
book. हाँ जी.
I agree with your basic formulation that how the two-nation theory developed. And as a student, as a teacher, my position has always been that two-nation theory is basically an ideological hindsight.
Quite right.
It's an ideological hindsight. The political developments of 30s and 40s, as a matter of fact, brought to a situation of partition, and the ideologues of the partitions tried to justify it on the basis of two-nation theory, going back to the 1857.
Quite.
Having said this, my take on this is that I totally agree with you that if you see the situation up to early 1920s, up to Khilafat, there is an idea of communities, which I'll come later. It is the phase of 20s, the power sharing in the provinces, about which David Page also talks about, and how that power sharing will have implication for the center later on.
जी.
That started having its impact on the national politics.
Quite.
And in 1923, so Hindutva comes, that is by Savarkar, and in 1925, RSS is formed. And the idea of Hindu nation separate from Muslim is given.
Okay, yeah.
But this is something which is a part of a debate, or you can say it's a construct, but it didn't have any historical logic. But this gave an idea to the other side, those who are talking of Muslims as separate. The idea came in 30s. You start from Rahmat Ali and then you come to 1940s. The point is that if you see in real history, the two-nation theory, to me, does not exist up to 1920s.
Quite right.
Now the question, therefore, I consider that two-nation theory, if at all you need to locate it, if at all there is a need to it, don't go back from before 1920s. You can just relate it with the situation which was developing in provinces, particularly in Punjab and Bengal, in Muslim
Okay.
majority provinces in Punjab and Bengal. I don't know much about Bengal. Now I come to your second point. You see, the point how we go back to the two nation. The reason is that late 19th century, Punjab in particular, sir, you know better about it. It was Sanja Punjab. It was a totally shared culture, and you rightly,
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
you rightly said it that it is the culture in Punjab. It's a culture which is this culture was so much of syncretic, so much of
Yeah,
common with each other. There could never
absolutely.
have been any thought of it that there is anything like Muslim as separate or Hindus
We
as separate.
had we had Hussaini Brahmins.
Brahmins.
Can
Yes,
you
this is
imagine such a
this Monica,
syncretism?
my
Yeah,
teacher, Vian Datta was my teacher. Now,
I
let me
could
sir
understand.
let me add here, which I want to say. When you say about the really social religious reform movements, you end your point here. But I think late 19th century is the period when we were in the process of making one nation, India, as well as communities at the local level. And
Sorry, say it again. Say it again, sir. This one.
this one, communities in the late 19th century,
Yeah.
making of communities. It's a
Okay.
community is constructed. Britishers gave us the idea through census. Communities were given primordial. Sir,
Absolutely.
I have, I
Absolutely.
have discussed this point also. I'll not talk about my book. How the idea of Hindu community is constructed. First at the provincial level,
Okay.
and then it goes to the national level.
Absolutely.
Similarly, the
Absolutely.
Muslim.
The
The point
census records. Yeah. Yeah.
So the point what I am saying is, even when the communities were constructed, at that time, even the communities did not mean that they were two separate nations. It is
That's right.
when the power was related in the provinces, once the devolution of power takes place and related to the religion-based communities in 1920s, the idea of separateness comes. And
Okay.
this idea of separateness, so therefore, if at all, we need to go to the two nation theory in history. The history of that event starts from 1922 20s and not before that. So this is
Okay.
my position on your two nation theory. And I would, sir, I would just like to make it correct. I would just like to submit a point about Lajpat Rai. Sorry, sir, I could not join in the beginning. I missed your first 10 minutes presentation, but you made two comments about Lajpat Rai. One, you said that Lajpat Rai's father had joined, had converted to Muslim, and the second, you said that Lajpat Rai in 1924 wrote, I mean, in a way, justified partition, or sorry, he wanted partition. First thing is, I mean, it's a very small point. Lala Lajpat Rai's father was very close to Sayyid Ahmad Khan. 4 letters of Lajpat Rai. He was also in a way performing namaz, everything he was doing, but at the same time there were certain family pressures and all. At never stage he converted. Yes, he had become a great sympathizer of but this is a very small point. But the second point, which is very crucial, which you said, and that is that in 1934 Lajpat Rai accepted after Kohat Riot. Sir, my point here is that if you read those 14 letters, once Salil Saab came to our university, whether he wanted to listen me or not, I took it some documents to him and showed him what Lajpat Rai said at that time. I hope Salil Saab, you would remember that. Sir,
Yes.
Lajpat Rai was responding to Mahatma Gandhi in those 14 letters. Mahatma Gandhi had his own vision of Hindu-Muslim unity. And that vision was that Hindu being a majority should be very open to minority, give them whatever they want. Lajpat Rai, if you read those 14 letters, he said, I'm willing to accept everything what you are saying. But in Punjab, Hindus are minority. And therefore, what I am saying is, do not give statutory majority to the Muslims in Punjab, do not give, because this would create more tension. And if you read all those 14 letters, Sir, he ends by saying, let me tell the Hindus, there can never be a Hindu Rashtra. Let me tell Muslims, there cannot be a Muslim. He was responding, this is the 9th, this is the 11th letter. 11th letter, if you read, he was responding to a proposal of Hazrat Mohani. साहब हजरत मोहानी कह रहे थे कि ऐसे करिएगा कि हम छोटे छोटे प्रोविंसेस बना लेते हैं और उन कुछ मुस्लिम मेजॉरिटी प्रोविंसेस हो जाएंगे, कुछ हिंदू मेजॉरिटी प्रोविंस। तो लाजपत राय कहते हैं कि देखिए अगर आप ये कहते हैं तो फिर ऐसा करिए पंजाब को 2 पार्ट्स में डिवाइड कर दीजिए, एक पंजाब मुस्लिम मेजॉरिटी का हो जाएगा और एक हिंदू और सिख मेजॉरिटी का हो जाएगा। पर अगर हम आपकी ये बात मान ले, रीड द लास्ट 4 लाइंस गिवन इन ट्रिब्यून given in Tribune, not in B.R. Nanda's volume, and he says, मैं ये भी बात कहना चाहता हूं, if we accept your point, it would amount to partition of Hindu India and Muslim India. So he was responding. Unfortunately, R.J. Moore picked up this line, and R.J. Moore first time wrote in 60s. Then number of people started writing, and they never went to and saw the original, what was written. So my point on it is that Lajpat Rai, actually, I'm not a defender of Lajpat Rai. Some friends say that I criticize because he was fighting the cause of Hindu minority. Salil Sahab, I would invite you. He was fighting the cause of Hindu minority in Punjab, but by supporting the cause of the Hindu majority.
ठीक है,
करना चाहते हैं वो करना चाहते हैं हिंदू माइनॉरिटी की, पर वो सोचते हैं कि मैं हिंदू सभा को सारे देश में मजबूत कर दूं।
हाँ जी, ठीक है।
ये जो पॉलिटिक्स थी ना, और बार बार आखिर में भी एक बात माननी पड़ेगी कि उन्होंने जो 1928 में, आपने बिल्कुल ठीक कहा, जो नेहरू रिपोर्ट का प्रपोजल था, वो ये तो कहते हैं कि आपका प्रपोजल ठीक है, मैं आपसे मानता हूं, और हिंदू महासभा का जो परमानेंट था वो लोग नहीं मान रहे थे। Actually, sir, Lajpat Rai was fighting against those who were champion of two nation theory within the Hindus. Yet,
ये बात है कि इतना कुछ सीखने को है। Every time you meet a scholar of your stature और
नहीं सर, नहीं
इस तरह तो कई नई पॉइंट समझ आते हैं।
मेरा कहने ये सर, मैंने ये किताब में भी मेरी किताब अभी 2 महीने पहले प्राइमस से आई है, और उसके अंदर मैंने ये पॉइंट सारे डिस्कस किए हैं, क्योंकि मैंने उसमें डिस्कस, पहले मैं पढ़ता रहा इसके ऊपर, तो मैंने हिंदू कॉन्शियसनेस को पढ़ा, और मैं जान के वर्ड यूज नहीं कर रहा हूं कि शुरू के अंदर हिंदू कॉन्शियस इज नॉट नेसेसरली कॉम्युनल एंड मुस्लिम कॉन्शियसनेस इज आल्सो नॉट कॉम्युनल। मैं कॉम्युनल वर्ड को बड़ा सेलेक्टिवली यूज करता हूं। मैं कहता हूं कम्युनलिज्म तब आता है जब आप किसी दूसरी कम्युनिटी के अगेंस्ट हेट्रेड क्रिएट करते हैं। या
ये जो हुए है ना मेरी डिस्कशन, तो उसके अंदर ये जो थे सुरन दास जी, इन्होंने कहना शुरू कर दिया जी कम्युनिटेरियन में और कम्युनल में। अब मैंने कहा यार, अगर आपने मेरी किताब पढ़ ली है और समझ नहीं आई, अब मैं आपको कैसे समझा सकूं?
एक बताऊं आपको सर, सुरंजन इज अ वेरी डियर फ्रेंड ऑफ माइन, तो मैं आपको एक वर्ड कह खत्म करना चाहूंगा कि मैं कमेंटेरियन के अंदर एक जो सबसे बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है कि जब कम्युनिटीज बनती है ना, हर एक कम्युनिटी की एस्पिरेशंस थी, परंतु वो कम्युनिटी की एस्पिरेशंस नेसेसरली हेट्रेड वाली नहीं थी जो कन्वर्ट हो जाती।
यही तभी तो मैंने वो एक बनाया है कि एक कमेंटेरियन जिन है और एक कम्युनल जिन है।
तो सर मैं
आपके दोस्त को समझ नहीं आई।
नहीं, लास्ट में सर मैं आपको यही कहना चाहता हूं कि many persons including Lajpat Rai were not supporter of a separate Hindu nation, but the very idea that strengthen Hindu community at the national level so that you can ask the Muslims to accept it, this itself is communalism.
Sure.
कम्युनलिज्म को आप बड़े सटल तरीके से कर रहे हैं, So ये मेरा, sorry sir, this is my submission. I leave it to you.
It's a great intervention.
Thank you, sir.
Can we know? I think there are 2 questions in the chat box and 2 people have raised their hands. Ashish Gorian, he had a question in the chat box, which sir pertained. He wanted you to talk about this alternative party of 1940s in which Ambedkar and Jinnah and Periyar sat together. But he also has raised his hand. So maybe I would welcome Ashish Gorian to make his point briefly, then Village Vigilante, and then Nirja Singh has a question. I'll take that up and then you can answer them and wind up the discussion.
हाँ जी.
Yes, Ashish.
Thank you, sir. First of all, it was a very good chat, Mr. Ishtaq Ahmed साहब. सर मैं आपसे मेरे दो क्वेश्चन है. एक तो सर सलील सर ने अभी बताया है जो मैं 1940 में जो मीटिंग हुई थी उसके रिगार्डिंग आपसे बात करना चाहता था. और दूसरा मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि जब हम टू नेशन पार्टीशन की बात करते हैं तो हम सबसे पहले जिन्ना साहब को ही देखते हैं कि एज अ मेन विलन हम कह सकते हैं टू नेशन पार्टी का. लेकिन ये कहना कहाँ तक जायज होगा कि पार्टीशन को लेकर के जो अशरफिया मुस्लिम्स थे, जो बेसिकली रूलर ग्रुप्स हैं, मुगल्स के डिक्लाइन के बाद से जैसे जैसे ब्रिटिशर्स ने जो प्रोविंस बने हुए थे उनमें भी उनकी जो रूलिंग जो सेट्स था वो खत्म हो रहा था. तो कहाँ तक ये कहना जायज होगा कि पार्टीशन के लिए अशरफिया मुस्लिम्स भी जिम्मेदार थे क्योंकि वो अपनी रूलिंग क्लास को खोना नहीं चाहते थे.
देखिए, सबसे पहले ये अशराफिया मुस्लिम पे आ जाए. ये सारा ये क्या कहते हैं ऑब्सेशन जो है ये तो उनका ही है ना. ये सारा सेपरेटिज्म, हमारे द प्रिविलेजेस वी हैड एंड ऑल, ये द मुस्लिम सेपरेटिस्ट मूवमेंट बिगिंस विद द मुस्लिम अशराफिया लूजिंग इट्स पर्क्स, इट्स प्रिविलेजेस. तो बात दुरुस्त है, लेकिन अशराफिया का सारा जो स्ट्रॉन्ग होल्ड था वो ये गंगा जमुना वाले इलाके में था. हमारे इलाके में आके ना ब्राह्मणिज्म जो है ऑर्थोडॉक्स था और ना इस्लाम ऑर्थोडॉक्स था. यहाँ पे सूफी, गुरु, संत और ये भक्तियों का निजाम था. लिहाजा पंजाब के अंदर तो ये पंजाब यूनियनिस्ट पार्टी जो थी वो इंटर कम्युनल पार्टी थी. हिंदू, मुसलमान, सिख उसके अंदर साथ मिलकर कोऑपरेट करते थे. ठीक है
जी सर. जी सर. जी सर.
और दूसरा सवाल आपका था कि दूसरा क्या सवाल था यार?
The party of 1945, the alternative party of Ambedkar and Periyar and Jinnah, their meeting.
हाँ जी. What about it? वो आप क्या, यानी आई हैव गिवन इन द बुक वो लेटर जो है महात्मा गांधी के जो है ना कलेक्टेड वर्क्स, वहां पे वो लिस्टेड है. आप वहां से जाके पढ़ लें. देखिए, मुझे समझ आती है कि by 1940 Jinnah did not want another leadership contest. He had done it with Gandhi and lost it. Now then he had won it against all other Muslim leaders. Now he was the leader of only Muslims. Periyar or Ambedkar were leaders in their own right. Why would he want to share power with them? So he had decided, rightly or wrongly, to go for Pakistan. And in a few weeks, he came out with the demand for Pakistan. और मुझे लगता है इसके पीछे सारे अंग्रेजों की भी एनकरेजमेंट होगी.
जी सर. जी सर.
वो देखे जाते हुए अंग्रेजों ने बेतहाशा डॉक्यूमेंट जला दिए हैं और वो मैंने वॉल्टर रीड जो एक ब्रिटिश ऑथर है उसको ही कोट किया. तो वो जो हमारे पास ट्रांसफर ऑफ पावर में डॉक्यूमेंट्स आए हैं उसकी बुनियाद पर ही हमने ये सारी ब्रिटिश पॉलिसी को अंडरस्टैंड किया है ना. लेकिन इसके पीछे क्या होता रहा वो तो नहीं ना बताते. वो
जी
कोई नहीं बताता.
Okay, now we have there is one question in the chat box. There are two questions in the chat box. Professor Nirja Singh wants to know what was Sir Syed Ahmad's attitude towards converted Muslims? How did he look upon this question? And then, yes.
With unmitigated contempt. Unmitigated contempt. मसलन एग्जाम्पल है कि बरेली के मुसलमानों ने उनका जो मॉडल था ना अलीगढ़ वाला, उसकी बुनियाद पे दे एस्टैब्लिश्ड स्कूल और उनको बुलाया कि आप आए और इसकी इनॉग्रेशन करें. इनॉग्रेशन में जब ही वाज द चीफ गेस्ट, तो वहां पे बजाय तारीफ करने के उसने कहा कि ये आप क्या कर रहे हैं, ये दुकानदारों के बेटे, कारीगरों के बेटे जो हैं, इनके लिए ये नहीं है, ये सिर्फ अशराफिया के लिए मॉडर्न एजुकेशन है, तो आप बिल्कुल ये ना करें। फिर उसने कहा है सर सैयद ने कि ये जो आप इंडियन इंटर्न, वो क्या कहते हैं, आईसीएस क्या होता था यार, वो
ICS, हाँ।
आईसीएस का जो इम्तिहान है उसके अंदर ये दर्जियों के बेटे भी बैठ जाएंगे, ये भी बैठ जाएंगे, तो क्या आप उनका हुक्म मानेंगे? तो वहां पे जो अशराफिया थी उन्होंने कहा बिल्कुल नहीं, बिल्कुल नहीं। क्या बंगाली जो आते हैं जो तलवार देख के कांपना शुरू कर देते हैं, अगर वो अफसर बन जाएगा तो उसकी बात आप मानेंगे? तो वहां पे भी उन्होंने कहा नहीं। तो he had unmitigated contempt for converted Muslims, because most converted Muslims, if not all, came from the working class background जो होती हैं। मसलन जो वीवर्स हैं, उसने तो बल्कि कहा है कि ये 1857 में जिन मुसलमानों ने हिस्सा लिया है वो तो ये वीवर्स थे, जुलाहे थे। जो हम अपर कास्ट जो हैं, हम तो बिल्कुल क्रिश्चियनिटी और इस्लाम तो बड़ी एक जैसी रिलीजन्स है। तो सर सैयद का अनमिटिगेटेड, विदाउट एनी रिजर्वेशन, कंटेम्प्ट फॉर कन्वर्टेड मुस्लिम्स, एंड ही वाज नॉट अलोन। ये अशराफिया की एक पुरानी ट्रेडिशन है। पंजाब में अशराफिया शरूफिया की कोई पोजीशन नहीं थी, बंगाल का मुझे नहीं पता। यहाँ पे जिम्मेदार जिसके पास मुल्क जमीन है वही उसका मालिक है, तो उसकी उतनी पोजीशन थी। कोई सैयद थे तो उनको एम ही पीरी फकीरी पे रखा हुआ था, बट पीपल हु ओन लैंड हैड द रियल पोजीशन। यहाँ पे कोई उनका कोई नहीं था। ये सारा आपका वहां पे एक तो ऑर्थोडॉक्स ब्राह्मणिज्म भी वहां पे ही है, ऑर्थोडॉक्स इस्लाम भी वहां पे ही है। हमारे यहाँ आके तो अवामी जो लोकल कल्ट्स हैं और जो ये एक दूसरे सिंक्रेटिज्म जो है वो नेचुरल हो जाती है। बंगाल का मुझे आई एम नॉट सो वेल इन्फॉर्म्ड, लेकिन पंजाब का तो यही था। हमारे घर के अंदर अनटिल आई लेफ्ट पाकिस्तान, दिवाली के दिन हमारे यहाँ बैठ के जुआ होता था सारी फैमिली में, बिकॉज माई फादर यूज टू डू दैट विद हिज क्लास फेलोज एट FC कॉलेज लाहौर। तो हिंदूज हैड गॉन एवरीथिंग, बट दिवाली वाज इम्पोर्टेंट फॉर अस लाइक ईद। तो ये तो हमारे घर में होता रहा है। मेरे दादाजी के जो किराएदार थे, कोई पंडित, ये वो आ जाते थे कि मियाँ जी साढ़े कोल ते पैसे नहीं हैगे, तो दादाजी अपने बेटों को गालियां देते थे, ये इनको मत तंग करो, जब इनके पास होंगे किराया दे देंगे। इस किस्म के क्लोज रिलेशनशिप थे।
Sure. I think Village Vigilante has raised a hand. Do you want to make your point? That's the name, Village Vigilante. Yes. Not very clear. Your audio is not very clear.
Sir, I was saying that I wouldn't mind going.
आवाज नहीं आ रही।
नहीं. Do you want to write down your question, because your audio is not clear to any of us?
Hello, check. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Now
I
we
was
can.
Yes.
Sir, I don't mind going according to my turn. I believe there are a few people before me, so if you don't mind, I would like to go later.
Okay. There is one more question on the chat box. I'll just read it. This is from Drivyani Motla. The question is, hi, Professor Ahmed and everyone else. Thank you for such an amazing discussion so far. I was wondering if you could please comment on how was secularism being defined when the two-nation theory emerged? What about assertions that even the secular of Congress was mostly defined along upper caste Hindu lines? This is the question to you, Professor Ahmed.
देखो यार, बात सुने। आई थिंक दिस इज ऑल प्रोपेगेंडा। मोतीलाल नेहरू रिपोर्ट पढ़ लो, उसमें है देयर विल बी नो स्टेट रिलीजन, men and women will have equal rights. Once you say that, तो वहां पे वो हिंदू अपर कास्ट कैसे हुआ? एवरीबॉडी हैज वन इक्वल वोट भाई। अगर आप अपने जाएं मानु समित्री में, तो ब्राह्मण के पास 10,000 वोट और दलित के पास तो कोई वोट नहीं होना चाहिए। लेकिन अगर सबको एक वोट मिल रहा है तो वो फिर अपर कास्ट तो बात नहीं ना हुई, सबको इक्वल कर दिया पॉलिटिकली, जो कि लिबरल डेमोक्रेसी का असूल है। लिहाजा आई डोंट एक्सेप्ट इट। हाँ, लीडरशिप असल में ये भी तो हिस्ट्री है ना, पढ़े लिखे लोग कहाँ से आते हैं? वही लोग आते हैं जिनके पीछे ट्रेडिशन होती है, थोड़ी सी इकोनॉमी बेहतर होती है, सोशल स्टेटस होता है। तो अपर कास्ट ही ने आगे आना था, लेकिन उन्होंने जो रिफॉर्म किए महात्मा गांधी ने, दलित्स को मंदिरों में लाने के, ये सारे अपर कास्ट जो ऑर्थोडॉक्सी है उसके खिलाफ थे ना। अब 3000 साल का आपका एक सिस्टम है, उसको रिफॉर्म करते करते टाइम लगेगा, बट इंटेंशन एक लिबरल इगैलिटेरियन ऑर्डर की ही थी। सो आई डोंट एक्सेप्ट दैट कि ये अपर कास्ट लीडरशिप तो जरूर थी, क्योंकि पढ़े लिखे लोग वहीं से आते थे। मुसलमानों में भी तो जितने लीडर आए हैं उनके पीछे लोग पढ़े लिखे हैं ना, कहां से वरना आते? पहले जमाने में जिसके पास तलवार थी वो लीडर था। जब से अंग्रेज आए तो एक चेंज तो आया ना कि पढ़ लिख के आओ और तब हमारे साथ बात करो। बात खत्म हो गई।
Sahibane Saif versus Sahibane Qalam. I mean, this was the big transition
Exactly.
in the elite profile in the 19th century.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Village Vigilante, now you can ask your question and please speak into the mic so that we can hear you.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Ishtiaq sir, first of all, thank you so much for this enlightening talk, and the point that you just made, thank you so much. I think it needs to be propagated far more than the propaganda here. I've had the privilege of being a student of Professor Salil Mishra, and most of my understanding of modern history comes from there. I am a student of subaltern history, sir. So my question would be on the similar lines. ज़्यादातर जो बातें हैं सर वो कही जा चुकी हैं, तो मैं बस I'll just cut to the chase very quickly. Agreeing with Professor Tudeja and Ma'am Mahajan that जब हम मॉडर्न कॉन्सेप्ट्स को एक सॉर्ट ऑफ रेट्रोस्पेक्टिव एनालिसिस में व्हेन वी ट्राई टू यूटिलाइज देम, तो हमारा जो लेंस है वो चेंज हो जाता है और हम बहुत सारी चीज़ों को बहुत सारे वी कैन पुट देम इन अ लॉट ऑफ से कैटेगरीज जहाँ पे वो शायद उस टाइम पे जब वो हो रही थी वो बिलोंग नहीं करती थी। उनमें से सर एक चीज ये भी है कि मॉडर्न इंडियन हिस्ट्री की हमारी एक अंडरस्टैंडिंग में एक डिस्कोर्स है जो ये कहता है कि पाकिस्तान का जो कंसेप्चुलाइजेशन था वो एक इट वाज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ अ स्पाइरल रादर देन एन आइडिया दैट वी एट्रीब्यूट टू जिन्ना साहब, जिसमें हम ये कहते हैं कि इनिशियली अब अंडरस्टैंडिंग द फैक्ट दैट मुगल सल्तनत राजा थे इस पूरे सब कॉन्टिनेंट के और हम सारे के सारे लोग चाहे हिंदू मुसलमान सिख हों, हम बाशिंदे थे काफी लार्ज एक्सटेंट तक. सो व्हेन वी लुक एट द expression of this separate Muslim identity in front of the British, what we generally look at it as is an expression of सेपरेट कल्चर एंड सेपरेट मुस्लिम एस्पिरेशन, जिसको हम एक तरीके से एक बार्गेनिंग चिप की तरीके से हम इमेजिन कर सकते हैं, जो ब्रिटिश के सामने रखा गया था ताकि जो मुस्लिम कम्युनिटी है उनके पास एक सॉर्ट ऑफ एक पावर के लिए बार्गेनिंग चिप रहे जहाँ पे वो अपने इंडिविजुअल और कम्युनिटी एस्पिरेशंस को एक्सप्रेस कर सके. लेकिन अनफॉर्चुनेटली वो आगे आगे चल के एक स्पाइरल बन जाता है जिसका एक क्रिएशन फिर हम पाकिस्तान के तौर पे देखते हैं. So my question is, A, would you first agree with that view? And second would be on this idea that in a country where we already have the Muslim community for a very long time, at least until Bahadur Shah Zafar is deposed as the dominant force, that community having its leaders expressing the desire of a separate nation rather than a conciliable view of society. Would you, what would your view be on that, sir?
यार ये बहुत लंबा आपने वो तमीद कहते हैं उर्दू में बोल दिए, समझ नहीं आई समझ नहीं आई आपकी बात. बात ये है कि यार बात सुनो, जब तक मुसलमान रूल कर रहे थे तो तब तो पाकिस्तान नहीं बनाया। वो तो
हाँ जी।
कोशिश थी कि एम्पायर जो है जितनी भी फैले, और उसके अंदर राजा टोडरमल और ये जो खत्री हैं ये सारे, और ब्राह्मणों की साथ अपनी कंसल्टेशन में उन्होंने रखे हुए थे मुसलमान। मुसलमान जो रूलर थे वो रूलर थे यार, और यहाँ के लोकल लोगों के मदद से ही उन्होंने रूल किया है। ये बकवास है कि मुसलमानों ने यहाँ पे सिर्फ जुल्म किया है। अगर जुल्म किया होता तो 20% कन्वर्ट क्यों होते हिंदू? एक भी नहीं था रहना चाहिए हिंदू यहाँ पे। उन्होंने अपनी हुकूमत की, मौजें की, मेले किए, और जो निज़ाम यहाँ पे चलता था उसको चलाया। तो हाँ, जब उनके हाथ से पावर निकल गई तो अब पाकिस्तान बनाने का मकसद तो यही है कि दे डिडंट वांट टू लिव इन अ डेमोक्रेटिक सिस्टम वेयर दे मुस्लिम्स विल बी इन अ माइनॉरिटी, सिंपल एज दैट। माइनॉरिटी सिचुएशन में उनको डेमोक्रेसी पसंद नहीं। वो बिल्कुल इस तरह ही है कि मुसलमान जहां मेजॉरिटी में होते हैं वहां इस्लामिक स्टेट चाहते हैं, और जहां माइनॉरिटी में हो वहां सेकुलर स्टेट चाहते हैं। तो ये तो एक प्रॉब्लम मुसलमानों का है, जो मैं आई कीप ऑन टेलिंग देम कि यार टेक वन स्टैंड। हिंदुओं के साथ मिलके अगर हम रहते और एक पार्टी के अंदर सारे होते तो एक दिन एक मुसलमान भी प्राइम मिनिस्टर हो सकता था। व्हाई नॉट? ये कहना कि हम हो ही नहीं थे सकते, ये आई मीन ये इसी किस्म की बातें हैं। मतलब वी कैन कीप ऑन वंडरिंग व्हाई दिस हैपेंड, लेकिन व्हाट इज द एक फोकस सवाल किया था वो मुझे समझ नहीं आई आपकी।
फोकस जो ये था सर, दैट वाज द फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन व्हिच वाज कि क्या आप अग्री करेंगे कि जैसे बिपिन चंद्रा पर्टिकुलरली स्पीक्स अबाउट इट, जब वो कहते हैं कि जो पाकिस्तान का इमेजिनेशन जो जिन्ना ने एक्सप्रेस किया था, वो जब उन्होंने शुरुआत की थी वो एक्चुअली चाह रहे थे कि एज अ मुस्लिम लीडर वो एक सॉर्ट ऑफ पावर कंसोलिडेट कर सकें, लेकिन एक टाइम पे वो एक ऐसा विशियस स्पाइरल बन जाता है विच कल्मिनेट्स इनटू पाकिस्तान।
नहीं, ये बिल्कुल आई मीन हो सकता है ये भी हो, बट व्हाई इज दैट इंटरेस्टिंग? व्हाट इज इंटरेस्टिंग इज दैट जो मैंने जो 4 फेजेस बताई हैं, मैंने बताया जिन्ना साहब एट वन पॉइंट वाज अ डाई हार्ड इंडियन नेशनलिस्ट, उसके बाद वो
Yes.
मुस्लिम कम्युनिटेरियन हो गए, उसके बाद वो मुस्लिम सेपरेटिस्ट हो गए, और बॉम्बे के उन्होंने गवर्नर को कहा, कन्फाइड किया कि फ्रॉम नाउ ऑन henceforth I will use communalism. He uses the word communalism to rouse Muslim opposition to the Congress. Simple as that. And of course he thought that ये एक एज अ वो उन्होंने कहा भी है कि मैं एक गैम्बलर हूं, तो अगर उनका गैम्बल फेल हो जाता तो जिन्ना वुड बी जस्ट अ फुटनोट। बट सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर शुरू हुई, अंग्रेजों को उनकी जरूरत हो गई, तो जिन्ना साहब among one leaders of many became the key leader for the British to recruit soldiers into the British Indian Army to maintain on India, and that's where in the end you got Pakistan. Simple as that.
I think Yogesh, I think that was Abhinandan, if I could, Abhinandan Pandey. Thank you, Abhinandan. Yogesh has posted a question, and the question is that you had promised to speak a little bit about Ambedkar and Ambedkar's imagination and what he thought. But maybe, Yogesh, do you want to add something to it since you're there?
No, let me do it, because normally I don't. But when I noticed this is Ambedkar University, so I thought I must. वो ये है कि डॉक्टर अंबेडकर ने 1940 के रेजोल्यूशन के बाद पाकिस्तान पे किताब लिखी, जिसमें उन्होंने ऑब्जेक्टिफाई कर दिया इन अ वे, ये उनकी ऑब्जेक्टिफिकेशन है कि मुस्लिम्स विल नेवर बी लॉयल टू इंडिया, देयरफॉर गिव देम पाकिस्तान। लेकिन 1945 में उन्होंने फिर विदाउट एडिटिंग द बुक 1-2 चैप्टर ऐड कर दिए कि नहीं, मुसलमानों को पाकिस्तान की जरूरत नहीं है, क्योंकि पाकिस्तान तो ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्ट करता है उन इलाकों में जहां ये मेजॉरिटी में है। मगर Ambedkar, being a scholar with all the figures and the facts he had put in the book, was referred to by Jinnah, Gandhi in their negotiations, I'm told. The British referred to that. So in a way, two nation theory को डॉक्टर अंबेडकर ने भी सपोर्ट किया है कि इनको पाकिस्तान दे दो। बाद में लास्ट चैप्टर अगर ऐड ना किया होता तो ही वुड बी वन ऑफ द सपोर्टर्स ऑफ द टू नेशन थ्योरी, लेकिन आखिर में उन्होंने इस टू नेशन थ्योरी को खुद ही कॉन्ट्रडिक्ट कर दिया। ये उनकी स्टैंड थी।
Okay, Yogesh, I think over to you. We've had such a wonderful discussion, very enlightening, very encouraging, very reassuring, if I may add. And now over to you for you to wind up the discussion. Yogesh?
Yeah, Tanuja has joined back. Maybe she can do that. Tanuja?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
No. I'm sorry. I had to sort of rush to another meeting and then come back. As Professor Ahmed said कि ये technology का ही कमाल है कि आप ऐसा सब कर सकते हैं. So this was really an enlightening discussion. A lot of people participated and had several questions. And Professor Ahmed, thank you so much for bringing such diverse opinions and perspectives to this very much debated question in India right now. I thank Professor Mishra also for conducting this lecture and this talk, and to all our participants for participating in this conversation. So thank you very much, and we will see you again on 17th for our next lecture by Professor Shekhar Bandyopadhyay, and I will be sending out details for that lecture very soon. So thank you very much.
I must thank all of you for the invitation and for such a friendly conversation.
Thank you so much.
It was done in such a collegial manner, यानी जिससे अपने comrades के साथ आप करते हैं ना. So this was one of the most relaxed meetings that I have been a part of. So I thank you very much, and I hope I come to Delhi and
Yes.
deliver a lecture at your university.